nachamu, nachamu, ami. This is Shabbos Nachamu coming up the day after tomorrow. We endured the low point of the year, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, commemorating the destruction of both the temples. We went through that difficult 25-hour fast. Without, at Yom Kippur, you have a 25-hour fast, but you're also, reaching very ecstatic points in the liturgy and the prayer. Tisha B'Av is such a downer. But then we come out of Tisha B'Av, and the next Shabbos is called Shabbos Nachamu, the Shabbos of comfort. And this begins a cycle of 7 biblical readings. The Haftarah, so in synagogue on Saturday mornings, we'll read that week's Torah portion. And then after the Torah portion, there's a selection from the prophets. And this is from the book of Isaiah. And there's going to be 7 readings over the next 7 weeks from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah very much prophesied doom for the people. If they didn't get their act together, the temple was going to be taken away from them, and it was the first temple. But the prophecy also included the idea that while God would become angry with us, terribly angry with us, because we had turned our back on him, still that bond between God and the Jewish people, that covenant, would never be broken, and eventually God would take us back and restore our home to us, as it were. It's such a beautiful selection, so I thought I would actually read a little bit of this Haftarah that we'll be reading in synagogue this Saturday. And that was Eitan Katz singing Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, console, console, or comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak to the heart of Jerusalem and call to her, for she has become full from her host, for her iniquity has been appeased. For she has taken from the land of the Lord double for all her sins. And a voice calls, in the desert, clear the way of the Lord, straighten out in the wilderness a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised, and every mountain and hill shall be lowered, and the crooked terrain shall become a plain, and the close mountains a champaign. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see the mouth of the Lord that spoke. This is Isaiah chapter 40, by the way. And a voice says, call. And it says, what shall I call? All flesh is grass. All its kindness is like the blossom of the field. The grass shall dry out. The blossom shall wilt, for a wind from the Lord has blown upon it. Behold, the people is grass, and the grass shall dry out. The blossom shall wilt. But the word of the Lord, our God, shall last forever. And upon a lofty mountain ascend, O herald of Zion. Raise your voice with strength, O herald of Jerusalem. Raise your voice, fear not. Say to the cities of Judea, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God shall come with his strong hand, and his arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. It goes on. I'm not going to read the entire chapter, but the end of the portion, the end of the chapter goes like this. Even as though they were not planted, even as though they were not sown, even as though their trunk was not rooted in the earth. And also he blew on them, and they dried up, and a tempest shall carry them away like straw. Now, to whom will you compare me, that I should be equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? Who takes out their hosts by number? All of them he calls by name, because of his great might and because he is strong in power. No one is missing. Right? So behold, when you look at nature, you should see that it's the handiwork of God. You should lift up your eyes, lift up your heart. There is hope for the future. A day will come, promises the Lord, when he will send a Redeemer, and all the woe of this world and of this lifetime will understand why it was, and we will enter a new age, the dawn of a new age, the Messianic age. That is all from this week's Haftarah Nachamu, because this is Shabbos Nachamu, the Shabbos of comfort. All right, let's learn some Talmud. I actually anticipate a short class today. We are on page 15 here in Tractate Sukkah, 7th volume of the Talmud. We're still in chapter 1, and we'll be discussing 2 short Mishnas, number 8 and 9 of chapter 1. Let's light up the darkness. Who's with us as we do a little learning on Thursday, almost Shabbos? Yehuda in South Carolina, Melissa in Great Neck, Michael in Scranton, Carol in Cleveland, Stephen in New Hampshire, Rose in New Mexico, John in Maine, Paula in Chicago, Randy in Florida, PK in Colorado, the other Paul in the Great Northwest. Renee recognizes the song from Eitan Katz, Comfort My People. Lucy in Minnesota, Brandon says Shalom. Oh, PK likes the shirt. Available at shop.accidentaltalmudist.org. Stephen in Oklahoma, Sharon in New Jersey, Bill in Missouri, Pauline in Arkansas, Jane in Kansas City. Carol loves Isaiah. Beverly says Shalom. Sharon, I loves the version that Safam recorded based on this Haftorah. James says Shalom. Brandon says Isaiah 40 is one of my favorite passages. Nancy in North Carolina. Steve says Shalom. PK says, where is Nina? She's monitoring questions and comments from inside the house while making dinner. She is a multitasker, and actually she's going to dart out and pick up our son from his friend's house during the class. Alan in New York, William in South Carolina. Sharon says, I have that shirt. And Steven says, I have that shirt. I love it. How's everybody doing? Okay, over on the YouTube side, let me open that. Lynn in North Texas. Okay, let's get into Mishnahs 8 and 9 here in chapter 1. We begin right at the top of the A side of page 15. In the case of a roof made of boards that are 4 handbreadths wide, yesterday's Mishnah also talked about this. Can we use boards as the roofing material? Well, boards are made out of wood. They have to be made out of wood. Can't be, composite plastic or something. It is better not to, right? It should be leaves and branches and vines or whatever, plant matter, really in its natural state. And actually, we'll talk about this in Mishnah number 9. We talk about boards that are shaped as boards, problematic. Yesterday, though, the Mishnah said as long as they're 4 handbreadths wide or less, it's going to be possible. It's still problematic, as we'll see. But if we're going to roof our sukkah with these boards that are 4 handbreadths wide or less, how do we do it? So in the case of a roof that is made, now a roof, right? So this is the roof of a house. The roof made of boards that are 4 handbreadths wide upon which there is no coat of plaster, right? So this idea is you don't want to do this, right? You should build a sukkah for the purpose of Sukkot, not just convert an existing structure that happens to have a roof made of boards that are of the maximum width that will be valid for Sukkot. It's better not to do this, but in exigent circumstances where you have to do that for some reason, how are you going to go about it? Well, first of all, it can be made of boards, but if those boards are plastered, so then it's not going to work, right? They really have to be boards in their natural state. So if they are, so Rabbi Yehuda says that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree with regard to the manner in which you would render this roof of a structure fit to be the roofing of a sukkah. Beis Shammai, the followers of Shammai, say one moves each board, and then it is considered as though he placed the board there for the sake of the mitzvah of sukkah, right? You have to do something. You have to change these boards around a little bit so that you didn't just take a structure and call it a sukkah. You did something to it so that it would be rendered into a sukkah, even though you didn't have to do much since the walls, qualify. And then this roofing, it had a roof made of these 4 handbreadth wide boards. Okay, they would count for the sukkah, They have to let some sunlight through. But, if they already were arranged in such a way that it would work for a sukkah, you still have to go up and move them, according to Beis Shammai, so that you've prepared your sukkah for the purpose of fulfilling the obligation to dwell in the sukkah, not just used a structure that happened to work. And so Beis Shammai says one moves each board, and one then removes one board from among the boards and replaces it with fit roofing, right? What you should be using, palm branches or, branches and twigs and stuff, the kind of normal stuff that's used for the schach of a sukkah, the roofing of a sukkah. Beis Hillel say one need not perform both actions of moving all the boards and then removing some of the boards and putting proper roofing materials there. Rather, one must either move the boards or remove one from among them. Now, when it says remove one from among them, apparently that doesn't mean just take out one board. It means take out every other board and put proper roofing up there. And Rabbi Meir says one only removes one from among them, and he does not need to move the boards that were already there. What is the law on this? The halacha as written out by Rav Steinsaltz. In the case of a house whose ceiling is not plastered, if one wishes to render it a fit sukkah, he may do so by moving the boards. You do have to move the boards. This is accomplished by removing the nails that affix the board in place, with the intention that this action be for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of fulfilling one's obligation to dwell in the sukkah during Sukkot. Alternatively, right, so it's like the ruling of Beis Hillel, not like the ruling of Beis Shammai, who say, and you do this. Beis Hillel say, or. So either you move the boards, or you remove every other board and replace it with fit roofing, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in his dispute with Rabbi Meir, and in accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel in their dispute with Beis Shammai. Some say that this is permitted only in a case where the boards are less than 4 handbreadths wide, Rambam, Ron, and others. Practically speaking, since many later sages ruled that one may not use any boards ab initio, one should be stringent and adopt the second opinion, right? So the later sages are going to say what I told you yesterday. Okay, technically you could use boards to be the roofing of your sukkah, but you shouldn't rely on that. Maybe that was really only done when there was times of danger, like during the Roman persecution where they couldn't really have a visible sukkah. But it's just not going to carry the spirit of the sukkah if you just sit in your house and move the boards around a little bit on the roof, right? You should bring in, even if you're going to use that structure with its walls, you should remove those boards up there or move plenty of them and put proper schach, proper roofing of your sukkah. Okay, that was Mishnah 8. Now the Gemara. The Gemara asks, granted, according to Beis Hillel, their reason for initially prohibiting this roof is due to the principle, prepare it, and not from that which has already been prepared. Don't just use an existing structure. You have to do something so that you are personally building your sukkah or preparing your sukkah. If one moves the boards, he performs an action. Likewise, if he removes one of the boards from among them, meaning every other board, he also performs an action. Therefore, in both cases, he did prepare the roofing and the sukkah is fit. You have to do an action according to Beis Hillel. Okay, so either moving all the boards or removing every other board, that's performing an action. So now you can say that you prepared your sukkah. It's not the ideal way, but it would work. However, with regard to the opinion of Beis Shammai, what is the rationale for their prohibition against using the original ceiling for a sukkah? If the rationale is also due to the principle, prepare it, and not from that which has already been prepared, one of these actions should suffice. You're preparing. Or if the rationale is due to the decree of the roof, lest one come to reside beneath a regular plastered ceiling inside a house, removing one board from among them should suffice. The Gemara is asking, If the idea is you need to, prepare it so that you've done something, so why did Beis Shammai require both actions, moving all the boards and removing every other board? Why isn't one action enough? Beis Hillel seemed to say, well, their rationale is you have to prepare it, not just use something that's already been prepared. Alternatively, the Gemara is asking, maybe Beis Shammai's reason is a different principle. The idea of the decree of the roof, meaning that the sages decreed against just using the boards as they are, because some people will come to sit under a plastered roof and think that they're fulfilling the obligation of sukkah. Lest they make that mistake, the sages might have decreed you can't sit under boards at all. They did not issue that decree. But the Gemara is still asking, why does Beis Shammai require both actions? And the Gemara answers, actually, the rationale is due to the decree of the roof. And this is what they are saying. Although one moves the boards, if he removes one board from among them, yes, it is fit. If not, no, it is unfit. Moving the boards is not consequential. In the opinion of Beis Shammai, removing every other board is therefore necessary. Skip a couple of paragraphs, and the Gemara asks, what is the Tana, the rabbi of the Mishna, teaching us? Is it that Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that the sages issued the decree of the roof, and Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that the sages did not issue the decree of the roof? But didn't they disagree about this once? As we learned in a Mishnah above, one may roof the sukkah with boards. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Meir prohibits roofing a sukkah with boards. And the Gemara explained then that the dispute is whether or not the sages issued the decree of the roof, right? So they're disagreeing whether the sages ever actually issued that decree that lest people come to sit under a plastered roof, we're not going to allow them to just sit under boards. Rabbi Meir says they did issue such a decree, therefore you can't roof your sukkah with just boards. Rabbi Yehuda says they didn't issue such a decree, so you can roof your sukkah with boards. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, that is not the dispute. That's not what's going on in our Mishnah. That is not the dispute. As in the first clause, i.e. in the earlier Mishnah, we are dealing with the case of planed boards. And the rationale for their disagreement is not due to the decree of the roof, but rather it is due to the decree of the vessels that they touched upon it. The dispute is whether or not the sages issued a decree prohibiting the use of planed beams, right? Boards that have really gone through some manufacturing, right? They've been cut, shaped, planed, I don't know if they were sanded, right? But they were made smooth. They're really the kind of boards that are used for construction. Now, such boards, they're still raw wood that's basically just been cut. It's been a little bit whittled away. It's been planed so that it's a flat surface. It's still raw wood. But the sages issued, or at least the argument is that the sages issued a decree against using planed boards because people might think that, if I can use those kind of planed boards, which have gone through quite a bit of processing, maybe we can also use bowls and saucers and, other kinds of utensils. We know that the law is you cannot use anything that is susceptible to ritual impurity. Therefore, you can't use vessels and utensils, even though they're made out of wood, to roof the sukkah. Planed boards aren't vessels or utensils. They're not susceptible to ritual impurity, but they're similar enough to utensils and vessels that a person could make that mistake. And so the argument went, the sages issued a decree against using planed boards, lest people make a mistake and come to use utensils and vessels. And the Gemara asks, so according to Rav Yehuda, who said that Rav said, if one roofed a sukkah with convex arrow shafts, the sukkah is fit, but if he roofed a sukkah with concave arrow shafts, the sukkah is unfit. And he did not issue a decree and prohibit roofing with convex shafts due to the prohibition against roofing with concave shafts. We talked about that a couple days ago, right? That arrow shafts, again, it's a straight piece of wood that's just been cut. If the end of it is kind of rounded off, you could use those shafts, those arrow shafts, which are basically equivalent to reeds, to roof your sukkah. But if the ends of the shafts actually have an indentation where the prong of an arrowhead could be stuck into it, now that arrow shaft actually is a utensil because it has a receptacle that can receive the kind of male end of the iron arrowheads. Therefore, it's a utensil. Therefore, it can't be used on the sukkah. So Rav said we don't issue a decree against using the convex arrow shafts because people might mistake and come to use the concave arrow shafts. And likewise, the argument goes, we shouldn't issue a decree against using planed boards because people might come to use actual utensils and vessels. The last paragraph of this Gemara, before we go to Mishnah number 9, one may not use boards of this sort for roofing his sukkah. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, a sukkah roofed in that manner is unfit due to the decree of the roof. The fear that people come to use plastered roof. However, here in the latter clause, it is with regard to negating an existing roof that consists of boards of this sort in order to render the sukkah fit that they disagree. One sage, Rabbi Yehuda, holds the ceiling is thereby negated by moving the boards, and one sage, Rabbi Meir, holds that the ceiling is not thereby negated unless he also removes one beam from among them, every other board. So again, the point is being brought home. You wouldn't take these kind of boards, even though you technically could, and roof your sukkah with them. Like you built a sukkah in the driveway, you wouldn't then go take boards to be the roofing of it, right? This only comes up when for some reason you've got an existing structure that's got boards up there and you want to negate that roof as a regular roof, a house roof, and turn it into a sukkah roof. And how are you going to do that? Either you're going to move all the boards or you're going to take out every other board and replace it with proper roofing. That concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 8. Now, Mishnah number 9, and it's a short Mishnah, and the discussion is going to be short also, so I'm almost done. If you've got questions or comments, get them in. Mishnah number 9. In the case of one who roofs his sukkah with metal skewers or with the long boards of the bed, right, the frame of the bed, if there is a space between each one of them equal to the width of the skewers or the boards, and if he places fit roofing in those spaces, then the sukkah is fit. In the case of one who hollows out and creates a space inside a stack of grain, it is not a sukkah. All right, so there's two ideas here. The first has to do with skewers or the long boards of a bed frame. Why does that matter? So skewers, first of all, here they're talking about metal skewers, like from your shish kebab, right? That you're going to use these skewers to roast meat over a fire. Can you use that as roofing for your sukkah? Absolutely not. It's metal. It's susceptible to ritual impurity. It's a utensil. It cannot be used as the roofing. Can it be up there on the roof, just working as a framework to hold up the proper roofing? Yes, it can. But the Mishna is telling us that there has to be, more fit roofing, more appropriate, legitimate roofing up there on the roof than the amount of area that the skewers occupy. Can you use the long boards of a bed frame as roofing? No, you cannot, because the bed frame is a utensil. It is susceptible to ritual impurity. If you break it up, so you've just removed the long boards from the bed and it's no longer a bed frame, does it remain a utensil? Answer, the sages will debate that point, because even though you've broken it up and it's no longer a bed frame, you could use those long boards like as a chair or, to hold up other things. So it's still got that status of a vessel, and therefore you couldn't use it as roofing of the sukkah. But could you use it as a framework to hold up the palm branches or bamboo slats or reeds or whatever that you're going to use as proper roofing? Yes, so long as the proper roofing occupies more area than the long boards of the bed frame. With regard to this other idea, we're not going to get to it in the Gemara tonight, but this idea that if you had like a huge haystack, right, like a really big haystack. I didn't grow up on a farm. In the movies, I guess I've seen haystacks. They don't seem like that wide. They're maybe like this. But what do I know? Maybe some haystacks get really wide, and it's actually like, 10 feet wide. And if you somehow hollowed out the inside, it could sort of be like a hut whose walls were made out of stalks of straw. And then maybe you could put, proper roofing over it and use that structure as a sukkah. And the Mishnah is telling us, no, you cannot. Those walls are not going to count. We'll find out why tomorrow. Okay, now the Gemara on this Mishnah. So let us say, based on this Mishnah, that this will be a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, as it is stated that the Amoraim, the rabbis of the Gemara, disagreed concerning the following matter. With regard to the domains of Shabbos, if the breached segment is equal to the standing segment, is it deemed a partition or not? So when we were talking in Tractate Shabbos and also in Eruvin about a domain that is defined by a partition around it, some kind of a fence around it that's more than 10 handbreadths high. So if it's surrounded by that fence, it's a private domain. So you can carry anywhere within it on Shabbos because you're in a private domain. What's prohibited on Shabbos is to carry some object more than 4 cubits in the public domain or to transfer from a private domain to a public domain. So if you have a fenced off area, it's a private domain. But what if the fence is broken? Right? What if there are gaps in the fence? Is it still a private domain? So we learned then, and we're being reminded of it here, if the breached segment is equal to the standing segment, is it deemed a partition or not? Rav Papa said it is permitted to carry within that partition as long as the breached segment is not greater. It is considered a solid partition. And Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, said it is prohibited to carry within the partition unless the standing portion of the fence is greater. Right? So for that partition to work, that fence around the private domain to work, the standing parts of the fence have to be greater than the gaps. What they're really arguing about is what if it's equal? What if there's an equal length, feet of fencing, that there's an equal number of length, feet of length of the standing fence as the gaps where there's no fence. If it's exactly equal, one opinion is that, okay, it is considered a partition. The other opinion is that no, it's not. The standing fence, there has to be more fence than gap. Why are we being reminded of that now? Because apparently from the Mishnah, even if the fit roofing is equal to the unfit skewers and boards, the sukkah is fit, contrary to the opinion of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua. Right? So the opinion that said if it's equal fence and gap, that partition will work to define a private domain where one can carry on Shabbos. Here, with respect to the roofing of a sukkah, if the unfit portions, like the metal skewers, equals the amount of fit roofing, it's half and half, it seems like the sukkah would be fit, contrary to the opinion of the one who said that half and half is no good with respect to the fence around the private domain. And the Gemara answers that Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, could have said to you, what is the meaning of like the skewers and the boards? It does not mean that the space between the skewers and boards exactly equals the width of the skewers and boards themselves. Rather, it is referring to a case where the space is large enough so that the fit roofing can enter and emerge easily, i.e., it is wider than the unfit roofing. According to this interpretation, the Mishnah can be explained according to Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua as well. The Mishnah agrees that even if the standing and breached areas are equal, the sukkah is unfit. Right? There has to be more fit roofing than unfit roofing in the roof of a sukkah, or the sukkah will be unfit. And the Gemara asks at the top of the B side of page 15, isn't it possible to be precise? The Mishnah need not be understood in that manner, since it is possible to calibrate the width of the spaces equal to the width of the unfit roofing, as the Mishnah required no more than that. And Rabbi Ami said the Mishnah is referring to a case where one extends the width of the spaces beyond the width of the unfit roofing. The Mishnah deems the sukkah fit only if the width of the spaces of fit roofing is greater than the width of the unfit roofing. Rava said, even if you say that the Mishnah is referring to a case where one does not extend the width of the spaces, and nevertheless the fit roofing is greater than the unfit roofing, and how do we accomplish that? Well, if the metal skewers were placed lengthwise across the sukkah, then one places the fit roofing widthwise. And likewise, if the skewers were placed widthwise, then one positions the fit roofing widthwise. In other words, right, the boards or the metal skewers, whatever is actually just providing a scaffolding for the proper roofing, if it's arranged in this direction, right, you're going to make like a lattice work where now the proper roofing is going to be placed perpendicular to that. And that makes sense so that it can be held up by the framework, right? And that's how our sukkah works. We have, 4 long boards, sort of like 2x4s, very long, that extend across the top of our sukkah. Those are the boards. That would not be fit roofing, not proper roofing in itself. Even though they're narrower than 4 handbreadths, we wouldn't think of them as roofing. We wouldn't want to use that as roofing. And then the bamboo slats, which lie across the long beams, along the long 2x4s, the bamboo slats, which really are the schach, those are perpendicular to the beams or boards, as it were. That's the way most people arrange the roofing of their sukkah. Okay. Let's now go to your comments and questions. Nina left to pick up our son and did not give me the questions yet. She's probably not back quite yet. Didn't expect a short class, so let me scan myself for the questions. It's just a little hard to see. Sharon Frant Brooks, a friend of mine who was a Holocaust survivor, who told me that they had a sukkah room in his home in Poland, in Warsaw, I think, where they could, with a crank, roll the roof away and put up a schach in its place. And my father, from a poor shtetl, said they must have had some money to have something like that. Right. So were they doing that? It sounds like what you're saying is that's the way they normally did it. It wasn't a time of danger, and that's the way they did it. I mean, I have seen some sukkahs like here in LA where, yeah, there's I know one guy in our neighborhood, he has an area where like in the backyard of the house has like sort of 2 protrusions. It's almost like you can imagine a bedroom and the living room extend back into the backyard, and it sort of makes a U shape in between. And then he's got a pergola over that. He's got permanent beams across that area. So that area is now defined by 3 walls, and you can use 3 existing walls as long as they're more than 10 handbreadths high, and the roofing is going to be less than 20 cubits high. Then the beams of his pergola, that's not proper roofing, but on top of the beams of the pergola, he places all the palm branches. So he's got a built-in sukkah at his house. Why does it count as a sukkah, even though it's part of his house? Because he prepares it as a sukkah each year when he puts all, and what he does is he doesn't use the bamboo slats. He actually buys a whole bunch of palm branches that have been cut, from palm trees in LA, and places those up there. And it's nice when you have palm branches because like the sort of fronds, the palm fronds like sort of dip down a little bit, and it looks very natural up there. And it really looks like a sukkah. You feel like you're in a sukkah, even though you're just on his back porch and the 3 walls of the sukkah are just the walls of his house. It's that palm branches that make it a sukkah. Lucy, maybe modifying the roof so the house can be a sukkah reveals to us that a house's core is fragile and vulnerable. In a sense, we always live in the desert in temporary fragile dwellings with much less control or solidity than we think we have. That is a beautiful spiritual teaching, Lucy. I love it. Absolutely true. You know, we like to build a sukkah, if possible, build the walls, build the whole thing. But if people are converting their house or part of their house into the sukkah, it's a beautiful reminder. And all sukkahs should remind us of this, that, you know, everything about us is, everything about our journey through life is transitory, anything we own. I actually had a similar thought just this morning. I don't even remember how it came up. I think, I don't know, somewhere I heard, you know, somebody was old and they had raised, you know, a bunch of kids in the home, and then the kids were all out of the house and it didn't make sense for them to live in a big house anymore, so they were downsizing and moving to an apartment. And, you know, and that house was gonna now, you know, probably be bought by a young family, and they were gonna raise their families in it. And all the houses in the neighborhood, our neighborhood, the houses, a lot of them were built in the 1920s. And so lots of families have been raised in these homes. And I don't know, for a moment I said, oh, you know, like I really love our house. And, you know, our daughter is just graduated high school this year, so she's about to leave the nest. My son's going to be a junior in high school next year, so it won't be long. And I just had that very wistful moment, like, oh, you know, yeah, like everyone else, the day will come and we'll be leaving this house, and all the love and everything that we did to make it really, you know, a beautiful home that we love being in, and, you know, all the moments and memories that we had in our home, you know, they'll just kind of pass into the mist, and some other family will move in and make their memories. And that's good. That's the cycle of life. But yeah, it's a little emotional, a little wistful. And it's a good reminder. Thank you for that, Lucy. And Michael says, we have a rabbi that has this sliding roof in his dining room. Quite orthodox. Okay. So the point is, it can be done. The point is that it can be done, but, right, as we learned from Beis Hillel, you can convert a house, but you really want to show that you're doing it and preparing the sukkah for the purpose of sukkahs. What you wouldn't want is to have, let's say, an area in the house where you put up, you know, the schach, that is appropriate roofing, and then just left it there, right? And then the next year comes along, and okay, you know, we still got the dry palm leaves up there. We don't need to do anything. That you would not want to do, because then it might even count, I'm not sure, but you prepared that sukkah for Sukkot last year. You got to make some change. Maybe you don't need to replace all the palm fronds that are up there with new ones, but you should at least move them around. And you should definitely move them around, because it's probably all kinds of filth up there, and that stuff could fall down while you're eating your meal in there. You know what I mean? Like, you want to prepare the roofing of your sukkah anew each year. And PK says, you will always have the memories, Sal. Exactly. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, really getting ready for Shabbos with our regular time on Fridays, noon Pacific. And may this Shabbos that's coming so soon be a Shabbos of comfort for you and all your loved ones. All the best, and have a great night.